Hi, this is Daniel Kellogg, president of Young Concert Artists, and today I'm going to be talking to Bella Hristova, fantastic violinist on our roster. Hi, Bella, how are you today?
Hi, Dan. I'm well. How are you?
Good, very good. Before I jump in, I just want to welcome people watching us, say a quick couple of words about Young Concert Artists. We are an organization that dates back 60 years about, and our mission is to discover extraordinary young talent and help them get their careers started, both performers and composers. And Bella is just a superb violinist that we've got to know a few years ago, and it's a delight to talk to her today. So first, can you tell us where you are talking from?
Yes. Hi, everybody. This is actually I think it's my first Facebook Live where I've spoken. There have been concerts before, so this is very exciting for me. I'm coming to you from Philadelphia at home. I'm in actually my husband's composing studio, but it's our music room. And I'm surrounded by one cat. We have three more running around somewhere. But we're in Philadelphia. We're staying home. We're keeping safe and just keeping everybody in our thoughts in this time.
Well, that's great. So I think the first thing to ask is tell us what your quarantine is like. What have you been up to? What are you enjoying? What's driving you crazy?
So even though I'm a performer, I consider myself an introvert. So this time off actually has been just a chance to slow down and look inward. I'm actually in another time off right now. I had about a month off in between concerts. So my last concert was at the end of February, beginning of March with the Hawaii Symphony. And then I had about 5 weeks free. That's just how this year's schedule turned out. And I had plans for learning new repertoire. But so actually, it's not until this week that I'm starting to see concert cancellations. But the point of me telling you this is that I had already planned to take some time off to kind of recharge. Now it's just going to be a much longer time off. So I've been reading a lot. I've been cooking. I have been practicing. I've been working out. I've actually I make a schedule for every single day, so I feel like I'm feeling that gives me some structure to the days.
Well, there's so many things you just said that I want to follow up on, but the first question is you said that you took an intentional break, or it looked like there was going to be a break, and then you were savoring that. What does a break do for a musician? Why take a period of time off from performing?
Well, it's not like I turned down any concerts on purpose during this period. That's just how I worked out. So then it's something I was looking forward to because the previous 3 or 4 months were very busy. For me, I always try to go home in between concerts, even if it's for 2 or 3 days or one day. Um, to me, that helps me just recharge. That's I know that's a generic term, but I like my downtime and I like my alone time where I'm not interacting with people. So that's where I do some of the practice work that I have to do. And the first week of my time off, I played a video game for a majority of that week. It was Horizon Zero Dawn. It's a beautiful game. So that's something I had looked forward to.
That's amazing. I would not have guessed that you played a video game for a week. I don't know video games.
Oh yeah.
What kind of video game is it?
Well, it's set in a post-apocalyptic world where humanity has destroyed each other, but not all of humanity, and so there are giant dinosaur machines, and humanity is reduced back to tribes and hunter gatherers. So the main character goes around and tries to keep the peace between the tribes, all the while fighting these dinosaur machines.
I would never have guessed that that would be the thing you did in the first week. Um, you said that you're sort of arriving at the time in your schedule when you actually had concerts scheduled and now they've been canceled. And I know many cancellations have extended through summer months, and then we're all sort of waiting to see what happens in the late summer and into the fall. Are you starting to miss being on stage? Does it feel like there's a muscle that is not being worked right now?
Sure, I definitely miss being on stage. I think I fill that need by practicing every day, and also there are online performances now that people are taking part of, so that it's not the same. It's not at all the same. And I definitely miss, like, I'm very saddened that we're not in Washington State this week, and other things coming up. Actually, on Saturday night when the concert would have been, it would have been David's violin concerto that he wrote for me. That's my husband. We're going to do a live with Symphony Tacoma and with their music director during the time of the event. So that's something that we're looking forward to as well.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm so sorry that you missed that. So that's hopefully something that will be rescheduled in the future.
Yes, they're hoping that it can be rescheduled, and many of the things that have been canceled for now, I think there is hope that we'll be able to do them in the future.
You just mentioned something that I'm going to come back to, but you mentioned that your husband is a composer. So we'll bookmark
Yes.
that. But going back to quarantine, so you mentioned you did a video game, and I can actually sort of imagine in the first week it's just pure enjoyment, leisure, shutting down the mind. And then you've mentioned you've been reading. I know there's been
Yes.
some cooking. What else have you been doing? What have you been reading? What are you feeding yourself with?
I have been. I at the beginning of this year, before there was COVID-19 and before we all had to be quarantined, I made a goal for myself to read 50 books this year,
Wow.
and I have been reading more and more over the last few years. So, oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. Well, we'll hope for the best.
We'll carry on.
So I just finished two books, and they're sort of a pair, nonfiction books. One is called The Courage to be Disliked, and the other one is called, the follow-up is called The Courage to be Happy, by two authors, Ichiro Kishima and Fumitake Koga, two Japanese writers, and they deal with the teachings and life and thought of Alfred Adler, the psychologist and philosopher. So, and the Courage to be Disliked, it was my third rereading of it, it's a great book. They're both great books. Currently, I'm reading a book about Bela Bartok called The Naked Face of Genius by Agatha Fassett, which is somebody who knew him at the very end of his life here in the States. So I've been trying to read more nonfiction. I love reading fiction. I've been using this time to sort of do a little more digging inward, and so I've been reading nonfiction. I think up next is the book Conversations with Arau that Anne-Marie McDermott has mentioned to me before, and she mentioned in our talk a couple of weeks ago. So
that I love that you have a goal of reading 50 books. I'm one of those people that find concrete goals really effective. You mentioned that Anne-Marie
Yes.
McDermott had talked to us about this book, Conversations with Arau, and she gave us a message. She talked with a group of YCA artists a couple of weeks ago on a Zoom meeting, and she talked about how one needs to feed themselves inspiration. And it sounds like, at least for you, books is one of the primary ways you do that. Is that right?
definitely, I'm finding that a lot. I actually have not been listening to much music. I play every day and I produce the music, but other than that, I have been finding comfort elsewhere, and that has been in books mostly, and spending quality time with my husband and being home, cooking, and all that.
Well, since you mentioned
I love reading.
Yeah, me too. And well, actually, before I ask the cooking question, what are one or two books that are just all-time favorites that you could share?
Well, fiction, again, it'll go back to recent reads, but I read The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern this fall in November. That's a beautiful, fantastical, magical realism book. And you can't really describe it. It's a magical story. I read All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr this year.
That's great.
Just loved that. A couple of Donna Tartt novels, both The Goldfinch and Secret History. Those are the ones that are sort of fresh in my mind right now.
I admire you. You finished The Goldfinch. I haven't tackled it. It's certainly a long book. You had mentioned cooking earlier, and I know that you have very recently done a cooking video for another vlog. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, so that was actually a lot of fun to do. I think we're back on the connection.
Okay.
I made a cooking video for violinist.com. My friend Desiree Rostrat, I'm sorry, I butcher her name. She had a brilliant idea. Everybody's home, and so many people are cooking. She's asking a number of violinists to make their favorite recipes and make videos so that you get a sense of somebody's home and their personality, and you get to see the food. So I made a traditional Bulgarian cheese pie, which I've had ever since I was a little girl. It's usually street food, but you can make it at home. And I had a lot of fun doing that. Though I must say that I've got a very OCD personality, so the editing part of it, which I did all myself because I'm also very controlling, um, really, I had to stop myself from getting too obsessive.
I was going to ask that if you did the editing yourself. I watched the video and I love cooking. I love cooking videos. And you got a camera directly above. Was that a phone or did you have another camera you put above you?
It was on my phone. I got a small tripod for it, and I wedged it in the cabinets between our plates. It took some planning the days before. I would climb up there and see, okay, so I can use the counter from here to here, and it's going to be in the shot.
It's fantastic. Was that all the one take and your first take, or did you have several attempts?
All the cooking part was one take. I had several takes for the introduction, and I think a couple of takes for pulling the bonita out of the oven. But now we just went through. David helped me with the filming that I couldn't do, and we had our little cats too. They made an appearance, and then we got to eat it.
Well, I enjoyed watching it. I know Young Concert Artist is going to feature it in one of our upcoming newsletters, but where can people find this? What's the website where it's listed or posted?
It's on violinist.com, and it's on YouTube, and the blog is called Fiddler's Favorites.
Well, congratulations on a cooking video. That's amazing.
My first cooking video.
So I want to go to a different subject and find out a bit about how you got started playing the violin and what it was like to discover music as a young child.
Well, I was born in Bulgaria, and I grew up around music. I listened to music. My mother was the choral conductor and a pianist, so we had a piano at home. And my dad was a Russian composer, though I didn't know him. He passed away when I was very young, but I knew his music through my mom, so I heard many recordings of his music. She conducted his songs, and so on. And it was my mom's dream that her daughter would play the violin, that would be a violinist. I wanted to play piano, and I also wanted to play percussion when I was 6. But I got started on violin from then. I never had formal piano lessons, but I play around a little bit. But it was full steam ahead on the violin. From the time I was 6, I was sort of being told, this is what you're going to do, and you're going to be a concert violinist.
You know, it's a fascinating thing with people that start music at an early age. At some point, you know, the parents are putting the instrument in the hand and saying, we're doing these lessons. There might be a timer. You have to practice so many hours a day or minutes a day to start with. Do you remember when it really became yours and you were self-motivated?
I can't pinpoint a moment in time. I think for me it happened pretty late. I moved to this country when I was 13 to study violin. I went to high school, then I came to Curtis. I think by the time I came to Curtis, that was in 2003, obviously I was living on my own, so I had to do a lot of the work for myself, and I had to be reliant on myself to do the work. It's been a very slow transition.
What are some of the earliest memories you had of music just moving you in ways that no other art form could?
I remember listening to my dad's music, his songs, and there were children's choirs mostly, Russian children's choirs singing his songs, and they're beautiful melodies and harmonies, and I don't remember the words very much or being moved by the words, but there are words as well. And another memory I have is of David Oistrakh playing the Sibelius violin concerto. That's one of the first times I heard the violin. I think Sibelius is my mom's favorite concerto. So we had an old record of it, and I remember where you had to stop in the piece to flip it over to the other side, and then we would continue listening to it. David Oistrakh is one of my favorite violinists, and that is one of my earliest memories that I have of hearing the violin.
Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't know that your father was a composer and that you have these memories of hearing his music. I think that geography or place, location, can really have identity in music. Is there any music that you really feel connected to where you came from those earliest days?
probably feel more connected to Russian music than Bulgarian music, even though I was born in Bulgaria and I was a Bulgarian citizen until recently, and I grew up there. But I feel a deep connection to the Russian composers, Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky, Prokofiev. Just there's a lot of soul in that music and a lot of feeling.
Hmm.
And I love playing. I love performing those pieces, the concertos, the chamber music, the chamber works.
So you mentioned that you came to the United States for high school, and then shortly after that went to Curtis. Um, it takes a tremendous amount of courage as a child to leave your homeland and come to a new place. What was that time like? What I mean, were you scared? Did it take a lot of courage? Was it exciting?
It was probably all of the above things. It was definitely challenging. My mom sort of knew that I had to leave at some point. Many of the young and bright music students that grew up in Bulgaria would leave for study. Many went to Europe, but some came to the States. So that's just sort of the avenue that opened up for me. I think I didn't know to be scared then, looking back on it. I think it's crazy that my mother just let me go, but nevertheless, that's how I got to meet Ida Kavafian and learned about Curtis, and here we are.
What age did you start at Curtis?
17.
17. And what was your Curtis experience like?
It was very special. It was like a family. Ida Kavafian, who's one of my favorite people, and she's a YCA alumna, and she was my teacher there, and she was just so inspiring to work with every week and to play for, and also to talk to as a human being and a mother figure. I think she plays that role for many of her students. So it was very rewarding. I felt tremendous support from not only the teachers, but also my classmates and colleagues.
You know, we have that in common. I was a student at Curtis as a composer many years ago. I think about how special that place is and how special that time is, and often we don't know to savor it in the moment. If you could go back and talk to your 17-year-old self,
Yes,
and say something about what you should do at Curtis, or what you should do with that time, what would you say?
I would have practiced more. I would have
Okay.
taken more advantage of everything that the school has to offer, because I feel like my first year, I was so wide-eyed and in awe of the school. I don't know. I just feel like I didn't get a lot of work done. I mean, I must have gotten some work done, but I feel like by the time I could see the finish line, I sort of wished I had done more already then.
It's fascinating that those undergraduate days are some of the most formative, and yet they fly by and they're so hard to process, but they're so essential. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's great. You know, in the past year, I've had a couple of opportunities to see some of YCA's really fantastic alumni around you, people like Ida and Ani Kavafian and Marie McDermott and others, and they are so warm to you, and I see them
Oh,
treating you like a colleague. And I know that
I
you've
love
been
them all.
well, you've been through the Bowers program, and you've become a regular Chamber Music Society, and you are partners with them on a regular basis. I wonder what it is like to make that transformation from being a student of somebody like Ida Kavafian, who I know, and she's a fierce presence as a teacher. I hope she forgives me for saying that. What's it like to make the transformation to really being colleagues with these people?
Well, it's another thing that happens. Like there, I couldn't pick a point where I said, "Oh, now I'm Ida's colleague." But even at Curtis, we played together, and the atmosphere was collegial. Even when she was in a teacher position, I remember we did a Schubert octet over many months, coaching with her, and she played viola in the group. And my first, I think one of my first performances with her in actual concert away from school was the Schubert cello quintet, and it was with both my teachers. So Ida played viola, and Jamie Loreda, who I was about to go study with, played violin, and I played violin as well. And I was quite nervous, but it was also just sort of taking the moment and realizing that I'm on stage with two musicians who I admire so much. Well, actually, there were 5 musicians that I admire, 4 other than me, but 2 of my teachers, and it was a very special moment to share. So that's a roundabout way of answering that. I don't know how that transition happened.
What
but
can
I'm very
you?
grateful for it.
Well, it's always a gift to play alongside such extraordinary people. You know, we're often elevated by the strengths of the people around us. What do you learn by playing with these people that is different than what you could learn in a lesson from somebody like Ida?
Well, I think we learn something anytime we play with another person. Um, I One of the reasons I love chamber music is that you're playing in a group, say with 4 people, and you see the points of view of 3 other people of how that piece of music should go. So it just opens up your world, and it's a never-ending learning process, which is another beautiful thing I think about being a musician. So yeah, and there's some communication that happens without words just by playing together.
Hmm.
I think you see different points of view, and there's really no one correct way of playing any piece of music, but making it your own and making a cohesive performance with your colleagues is, I think, what it's about.
Yeah, and you are very active as a chamber player. You also do a fair amount of recital work or solo playing. Then you play concertos with orchestras, and you do a number of performances every year. I also know, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, you're active commissioning and premiering new works. And then you also are active with residency activity, visiting colleges, universities. So it's a very broad career. And from what I've seen, you embrace all of it and you do it very well. How did you come to that? And is that what you expected to do when you started your music training many years ago?
I don't know that I had any, not necessarily expectations or really ideas of what I might be doing. If you had asked me 10 years ago, what are you going to be doing? I probably would have said, well, I hope to be doing more of what I'm doing now, with more variety. And that's exactly what I am doing. Um, I I love working with living composers. That's something. Well, I'm married to a composer, I know, but besides that, I think it's just so important to make these connections and to make new music happen. Just to as performers, we give birth in a way to these new works of art. Um, and yeah, it would have been amazing to ask Beethoven a question. So why not talk to the people that are writing music now and collaborate and create more music for the instruments?
So yeah, so now we're on the subject of premiering new works, and you often have contemporary pieces on your programs. You've commissioned works. First, I know that you commissioned a piece, an unaccompanied violin piece from Joan Tower, and Joan is one of the great American composers. She's a living legend in this country and all over the world. Tell us about that project. What was it like to commission a piece from Joan Tower?
So I love Joan. I first got to know her at Music from Angel Fire in New Mexico, which is Ida's festival. And Joan's commission is the first of 6 commissions that I want to do. So this is a very long-term project because for whatever reason, she's still the first one. I wanted to pair contemporary music with the solo works of Bach and Isai.
Mm-hmm.
So you see 3 centuries of inspiration from one another of writing for solo violin. And what inspired me to do that is I worked on all the Isai sonatas for solo violin with Jamie Laredo at Indiana, and Isai was directly inspired by the Bach sonatas and partitas. He didn't want his pieces to be thought of as just show pieces. He was deeply moved by the Bach. So I just thought if we just go century after century, we might skip a century, but
that's fantastic.
Have 6 short pieces written with that in mind. And I said that broadly to Joan, but I didn't ask her to quote anything or something like that. I just said, this is the idea that I have. It's something that I'm really hoping to continue. We just finding, presenters are afraid of unaccompanied violin recitals for whatever reason.
Oh, that's a whole nother.
That I intend
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just
another
keep going.
topic. But I want to ask you a little more about Joan, and then I want to ask about your wedding concerto. But with Joan Tower's piece, and by the way, there is a great YouTube video of you playing the piece, and hopefully somebody can put the link up in the comments, and people can check that out after the interview. Um, Joan is a very intuitive composer. You know, she goes to the piano, comes up with a germ of an idea, and then explores it, and a piece unfolds. What is it like to receive this piece? No recording, no information beyond what's on the page. How do you decipher a brand new piece like that?
It's it's a treasure hunt. I just, I approach it like any other piece of music, but yeah, there is no recording of it, so I just go through it. She sent the piece to me, and I wasn't able to look at it straight away, or I wasn't able to start working on it straight away. So when I finally did get into it, I had a couple of questions for her, and I played for her. She had comments back, but mostly it was a very seamless process. I really feel like I got to make it my own, and other people are playing it now, which is, I think, the best thing that you hope for when you commission a work, or for a composer when you write a work, is to get more than one person playing it.
I love that you did this and that you're commissioning other works. I personally think that the performer is a curator. You're deciding what music should be brought to the public. And to take the extra step to identify a composer, put together the resources, and commission a piece is a really fantastic thing. So hats off to you. Now, I happen to know.
What?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say I was grateful to YCA to present that recital, because it really put it all together. That it could be the first half unaccompanied, so it was Bach, Isai, Joan Tower, and then the second half was the Beethoven Opus 96 Sonata.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, yeah.
I happen to know that you're married to a composer, and of course, it's amazing to be married to a composer. Composers are great, but what are the downsides? What are the things that one would never expect about being married to a composer?
Well, David's watching, so I can't call them downsides. But I think the most interesting thing for me has been when David's writing on a piece and he's very excited about it, wants to share something with me. We come here, which is there's the piano behind me, and he'll play a little bit. He'll be like, and this goes like this, and then he'll sing something like, and up here, this is going to be happening, and meanwhile, this is going to be happening, and it makes no sense to me. But I know he hears it in his head, so that's been kind of something I can make fun of him for.
And is he looking to you for feedback? Is he looking for affirmation or encouragement or critique?
I think he's asked me for some very technical things when he writes for violin. When he wrote me the violin concerto, I know we're not talking about that yet, but I didn't want to be any part of the first many parts of him writing it. I didn't want to be part of that process, because I really wanted him to write the piece he wanted to write. And then when it was time for the final draft, we went through the violin part, and that's when we made some small edits.
Well, so you brought it up. Tell us about this concerto, this magical project.
Yeah. Well, David and I got married 5 years ago now, but we've been together for 10 years, which is crazy. And about the time we were getting married, or just shortly before, that was 2014, the executive director of Vermont Symphony Orchestra, Alan Jordan, he and David had been talking, and we came up with this idea of putting together a consortium project for David to write me a violin concerto. So it was co-commissioned by 8 different orchestras across the U.S. And it was, I guess, it was in a way a wedding gift, though the premiere was well after the wedding. Well, I guess that's how it works. Yeah.
Wedding gifts come when they come.
When they come. The piece is influenced by marriage and inspired by marriage, but not necessarily autobiographical. I think that's what David would say. With that said, he has hidden little Easter eggs in there. For example, in the slow movement, he quotes about 13 measures from my dad's violin concerto.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Right, to include him in our wedding and ceremony, since I never knew my dad.
Okay.
So that was something that was just incredibly magical for him to tell me about. And then a friend of his said, "What are you going to do next year?"
For the anniversary? Well,
Because, well, he told me on Valentine's Day.
so you mentioned Easter eggs. Did you know all of them, or did David let you go and discover them?
um, I did not know all of them. There are places where our initials are held notes between
Okay.
me and the horn, and there are places where the solo line and different orchestra lines make rings around each other, like
Okay.
wedding rings. So it's there's some of them are more symbolic, like the horn bell, and I'm Bella. Some people call me Bells sometimes. So little play on words like that.
So, how has your understanding of the music in this piece changed from the very, very first performance to the most recent?
We just played it in Hawaii, um, and every time we revisit, well, with every orchestra and conductor, it's slightly different, and I really love that because each performance becomes its own. I think I've gotten more comfortable with it, and I also I make different decisions from time to time about phrasing and dynamics and things like that. I think that's one of the really nice things about growing with a piece. The progress is incremental, but from like this month to maybe 6 months from now, you might hear it differently, and you might think, oh well, interesting, I did it that way before, but I want to do it this way now. So yeah, it just changes.
Oh, that's great. I want to talk about your recording some because for a young violinist, you've actually recorded quite a bit. You have three substantial projects up on Spotify. You may have other
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
How is recording different than live performance for you?
Well, recording is a snapshot, so it's a it's a beautiful snapshot, and it's but it really just freezes you in time. With that said, the last recording that I did, it was directly after a tour um, of all the Beethoven sonatas with my dear friend Michael Houston, who's a beautiful pianist. We played together. That was actually just our second major time playing together. Um, and then we recorded directly after the tour, and I think that was probably the best time to record something like that,
You,
because we've just been performing those pieces.
that was
Sorry,
a
I
big
thought you were going to say
project
something.
that project came about because you won a big competition, right?
Yes, so in 2007, I won the Michael Hill International Violin Competition in New Zealand, and part of their first prize is um, a concert tour the following year of New Zealand. And I played with Michael then, and we got to know each other musically. We just saw music the same way and had very similar intuitions about music. And on that tour, there were two programs, one of which had the Beethoven Kreutzer Sonata, and that program got picked something like 13 times, and the other one got picked 3 or 4 times. And actually, Michael also went to Curtis. He was a special student for about a year in the late 70s, I believe, at the invitation of Rudolf Serkin. So there was that connection too. But he is a very inspiring musician and person and player. So from that tour from 2008, I thought one day I would love to record and perform all the Beethoven sonatas with him. So that's why it sort of happened at this point in my career, because I really wanted to do that together.
Is it intimidating to record a body of music like the Beethoven sonatas with so much history, so many recordings?
Yes, and no, I know, yes, there are so many recordings, but this one is ours.
Yeah.
So, in a selfish way, it was something that just has been on my mind for over 10 years before it happened. So I just thought, it's something that's very important to me, and I was very grateful to Michael to want to play those pieces with me and to record them.
Well, beautiful recordings. They're on Spotify. I'm sure they're on Amazon. You could buy CDs. So I invite people to check
Yes.
it out. You do. First off, I want to invite people that are watching, if they want to sort of write in some questions. Somebody will text it to me, and I can ask you some questions coming from people watching. But while we're waiting for questions, you play a lot of concerts every year, and you do shift gears. You know, you might do a chamber concert, a recital next week, then orchestra concert. Tell us a little bit about life on the road. When you are out and about performing, how do you keep sane? What are some special things you do to keep grounded and focused?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm actually very lazy when I travel. I always have these big plans. I'll be somewhere new and I'll think, oh, I'm going to take a big walk today on Main Street, see all the shops, do this and that. And usually I end up sitting in my hotel and resting. So I do think I get energy from resting and being alone rather than being out. I don't necessarily get energy from being out all the time. So in a way, that lifestyle is suited to me because you can be alone after you're finished with your day's rehearsals and performances. On the other hand, it's very hard to keep a routine, which is something I'm loving now, is being able to have a routine every day. So you make do. The traveling, the actual like running around the airports, flying, I would say that's the hardest part for me and most tiring. And maybe it is for many people too.
And is the performing, being on stage, is that the best part of it?
I think so. Yeah, it's certainly very rewarding. Sorry, I think I'm about to lose my headphones to switch.
Okay. Well, you're switching.
To switch to the.
I can hear you. Can you
Yes.
hear me? Great.
Wait. Yes, I can hear you. I'm so sorry. I was having trouble with my AirPods before. Yes, flying.
Well, I was asking about, if performing was the rewarding part. But let me ask a related question about performing. I had the pleasure of seeing your YCA recital a little over a year ago, and it was a very big program. It had the Bach Chaconne, it had Brahms, I think Third Sonata, it had Messiaen, Ellen Taft-Zwillig. Really a big body of music and a big breadth of music. And there's an endurance and a sustain and just hats off to a really incredible recital. You have a very big appetite for music and what you do on stage. Is that fair?
I think so. Yes. I want to do it all, but when I plan recital programs, I usually start with one piece, and then build a program around that piece. I knew that I wanted to include the chaconne in some way, and after that, it just sort of, I was really happy with that program, just with the storytelling throughout the concert. The Messiaen is a beautiful work. I love Ellen Zwillig's piece. Spoiler, I might be playing it on Violin Channel next week.
Well, all right.
My living room recital.
Tell us when that's happening. You're playing next week on the Violin Channel.
Yes, I'm playing next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm doing a living room concert on the Violin Channel.
Okay, we will all tune in. And you might be doing the Zwillig.
I might be playing Ellen Zwillig's Fantasy.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And the Schoenberg Fantasy and the Brahms Sonata, I just thought, is paired so well in the second half. And I love Anna Polanski, and I was very happy to be able to play that with her last year. So it was a very happy musical experience for me.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm not getting questions, and I don't think, let's see. Well, I'll just tell people if they can text me the questions, that's great. I don't know quite where to pick them up, but I'll keep asking my own questions for now. When you say you build a program around a single piece, how does that happen? Do you have a list of pieces that you want to make sure you play someday? Where does this inspiration come from when you build a program?
I think so. Well, I would say the chaconne is my piece that I would pick to play for the rest of my life if I could just pick one piece to play. Not to listen to. That would probably be something else. So I love the chaconne. And when I was giving this encore concert and really to show who I am as a musician, I knew that I wanted to include the chaconne. And from there on, it just went, what else can I play for unaccompanied violin? And I had heard Ellen Zwillig's piece a few years before that at a Carnegie Hall recital and loved it. And it just sort of goes from there.
I'm smiling because I just got a question. Our mutual friend, composer Wang Ji, who's almost certainly up in Harlem watching from her apartment, wants to know how you and David met.
Well, that's a good story. And he's not, I get to tell it. David and I, now is the connection good? Because
It's okay right now.
frozen.
I think we were in and
I
out.
don't know if I'm choppy.
You're okay right now.
We met at Curtis in 2003, but we didn't know each other very well, actually, at all. And then I went away to grad school in Indiana in 2008 to 10. So in 2010, that's sort of when I feel like we met, or rather re-met. It was at the Marlboro Festival, and I was already moving back to Philadelphia to live here and start my career and base myself in Philadelphia. David was visiting, and he started, jokingly telling his friends, Bella's moving back so we can date. And I thought, okay. But our friends thought, that actually makes sense. You guys would make a good couple. So we started we were like, oh, we're going to go on a date. Yeah, sure, we'll go on a date. But then actually, our first date was visiting Jamie Laredo and his wife Sharon at their Vermont house. So
that's
and
nice.
We just thought, oh, we're actually enjoying each other's company, so this could be something. And I was, the timing was right. I was moving back to Philadelphia, and the rest is kind of,
Well, that's great. I like you both. I love you both, and I'm delighted to know you both. Here's a question. You mentioned you were an introvert. Who would have guessed? How does that affect when it comes to practicing and performing?
Well, as a performer, I get much more nervous. Yes, I did. I get much more nervous if I have to speak when I perform than just having to perform. So the practice, I enjoy being in a room by myself and working out the music. And on stage, even though I'm sharing music with people, in a way, it's still, I'm with the other musicians, the orchestra or chamber music colleagues, and we're communicating, but we're not communicating with words. We're communicating through the music. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well,
it's the actual, speaking with words.
It makes perfect sense.
That makes me nervous. And I enjoy connecting with people very much. Well, but it's just after connecting with people, I also enjoy my alone time.
That's good. You found balance. You found a way to make it work. Here's a question from Teresa Nolan. And do you miss your native Bulgaria? And what do you miss about it?
That's a tough question because I left when I was 13. And I really feel like I grew up in this country. So I miss the food. And my mother lives there, so I miss her. But I feel very much at home here in this country. So I don't miss it that much. I miss childhood friends that I had, musical friends, some of my teachers that I had there.
One last question, and then we have a little music to wrap up. This is a pointed question. What happens when you disagree interpretively with David on a piece that he's written?
Well, interpretively, he's actually very flexible. He's happy to hear his music played different ways. But sometimes some technical things, when I've asked for some notes to be changed, he always wants to know why, which I understand. But I often don't have a good explanation other than just because. But I'm also open to seeing things his way. If it's something he really feels strongly about in an interpretive way, it's, he wrote it. So I'll go with what he has to say. I think I can't win him over to my point of view.
That's fantastic. Most people that don't get to work with living composers, they don't realize we're almost always ready to hear other people's ideas and interact with them. And it's a tough part with Bach and Beethoven and all of those that came before us, that we just assume that it's inflexible, that everything cannot change. But yeah, I wanted to wrap it up around now.
Right.
I didn't give a proper bio to begin with, but you've won some great accolades, whether it's the Avery Fisher Career Grant or being part of the Bowers program with Chamber Music Society. And of course, at Young Concert Artists, we are so proud that you won our audition and have been on our roster. And as an artist, you just have fantastic range and breadth, and it's wonderful to see all the different things that you're up to. So where can people find out about you or follow you if they want to know more about you online?
Well, I have been spending time on Instagram. I've actually been thinking of ways to connect with people on there that really, well, besides the cats. Actually, I'm gonna grab my cat. One of them, he's been sleeping here the whole time. Little Frankie. So Instagram, I'm at Bella Hristova Violin, and Facebook also, and my website, which also, spoiler alert, might be getting redesigned soon. But I think Instagram is the best to find me now.
And you have a violin.
And YouTube.
Okay, and YouTube. And you have a violin channel recital next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And then
Yes.
the recital you gave for YCA a year ago is on our channel, and all of it can be watched with the Chaconne, the Messiaen, the Brahms. And then, of course, when concerts resume, everybody should be looking for you on stage, where we all hope that people can get back to soon. I want to thank everyone for.
I can't wait.
I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I apologize that there's been some audio delay, so sometimes Bella and I are waiting to hear each other talk. I think it's just a reality of doing an interview this way online. We hope people also will come and find out about young concert artists. It is our mission to discover people like Bella at the very beginning of their careers and just invest in phenomenal performers and composers, help them get on stage, give them career guidance, management, PR work, all the things that help somebody transition from being an extraordinary student at a premier music school to having a wonderful and sustained career. So you can learn about us at our website, yca.org. We invite you to donate if you're moved to do so. Bella, as we wrap up, we were going to play a little clip, and could you please introduce it? And then that's where we will end the interview and transition to your performing.
Yes, this is actually the encore from last year's recital. It's a beautiful slow movement by Bach. It's from the C minor sonata for violin and keyboard with Anna Polonsky.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. All right, bye-bye.